Well, hi, Sealed Book family. I am so excited to be here. You know, we've been through quite a journey together, and you have seen me interview this man, Doc Pete Chambers, several times. And we are blessed today to have a very, very special announcement. So I'm so honored to be sitting here with you, and even more honored because of where we are. So we are in Post, Texas, little tiny Post, Texas, at Ragtown Gospel Theater. And this is actually where we met.
Yeah, it was. We came over here to talk with Robert and Jamie. They were kicking off their Remnant tour.
Remnant Revolution.
And it's funny because the names, our Remnant A team, Remnant Revolution, we didn't talk about it. We just ended up with the same name. But we got to come to Ragtown, which was an amazing experience in itself. And of course, understanding the history and how your dad really led the charge for this thing to obviously happen and then to continue this many years. And I respect that man. I mean, you're just, you're blessed to have him as a dad and a leader of this. So here's why this is the first interview.
Yes.
Here's why we came here, right? You offered to come down to Central Texas, 5-hour drive, and I had to come over here from the Red River, and that's okay, because we had to do it here. Because when the seed, you always ask somebody, why are you doing something?
Yeah.
And it's aside from all the things about money and ideology and coercion and all that, but why are you doing something when I'm looking for a godly reason behind something? And somebody asked me, and I said, the seed was planted on Pentecost with a group of people who I completely trust, who've been through this not only COVID fight, but this fight for this nation for a while.
Yeah.
I have to go back to the people that started that, and it just so happens you have a show, right? and you have the ability to get it out, to share the full triune being that I am, right? In all parts, in all bits. And so doing it here is divine. It's an ordained moment, right? It is that kind of moment. It had to be here in my book. So when you offered it, I thought about it, I prayed about it, and came back and said, no, it has to be here. And so that's why we're here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to get to the rat killing, right? That's how we do it.
Yes.
So after our meeting on Pentecost,
Yeah.
right? Pentecost. We had a meeting with a group of people. I always like people to know where the seed of these things come from. This was Spirit-led. That group, we've been working together as the spiritual governor of Texas for a while, but we're going to take on the actual governorship in the next race in 2026. So I've put my name in the hat. We filed where we needed to file. We've waited appropriately. We've crossed T's and dotted I's, and that's where we're at. So we're jumping out of a plane, and we are on the objective.
Wow. So you are making the announcement you
Yes,
are
I am.
officially running for governor of Texas.
Right here, right now. This is the first time.
Wow.
We've talked to some folks by law. I cannot go out and talk to groups of people yet prior to this, but now that we've been approved, we can do this. So this is the first group of people online, but there'll be more, and we'll be out. We've got 260 days to get to the primary, and that is really where we're at. I'm running as a Republican, and we've got to get that primary. So that's the focus of this thing.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so Doc Pete,
Yes, ma'am.
where does that name come from?
Doc Pete. Right, so I am a doctor. It's funny, the other day in the trailer park where I live in Wimberley, the guy comes by and he's like, somebody told me you're a real doctor. I said, yeah, I am. Well, why aren't you doing doctor stuff? I said, because I quit doing that. I don't really like what's happened over the past several years with the COVID thing and all that. And truly, I'm working in a counter-human trafficking element right now called the Remnant A team. But I was a doctor. In 2003, I came back into the Army. I'd been out for a while. Came in 1983 on a Ronald Reagan, I like to say, and came out under this last character in 2022. But from 2016 on, I was in the Texas National Guard. And I served there as a Green Beret and then as a doctor as well. I've gone back and forth. I kind of like, two hats, a Swiss Army knife, if you will. So Doc was the affectionate name that all medics have in the field with their men, and it just stuck. And so most people call me Doc, but people that know me, my mom, she calls me Peter Constantine Chambers, and my friends call me Pete from the old days, and then everybody military on as a Doc, that's what they call me.
Wow. Okay, so You now officially have announced that you're running for governor. So how did you get here? Tell us the story of Doc Pete Chambers.
Yeah, okay. So, small town kid, dad was a doctor, family practitioner. My dad was an immigrant, a legal immigrant, and not illegal, a legal immigrant. And, American dream, came here with nothing, became a citizen, worked in a hospital, had great hands, helped out the doctors when he was there. And they actually sent him to medical school and became a small town family doc. And so I got to see that growing up, right? And that was always there. But know this about immigrants that come here legally. This is something very important. They will be the most patriotic people in the world. And he told me and my brother, I was the oldest son, you will serve in this country's military to give back what our family has here. Now my mom's from the U.S. and her family's, long lineage in the U.S. But that right there was the kickoff for me as an 18-year-old. I graduated high school early, joined the Army at 17, delayed entry, went in at 18, and when I'm at Fort Benning, Georgia as an infantry, trainee, the Rangers were jumping into Grenada. This is how far back, 1983, September. And I did my time. I wanted to be a Green Beret then. That was my goal. And it's amazing to watch the tapestry of God when he says, you're going to break your leg. Well, he didn't say it. I did it. And he said, this is what I'm going to do with it. You're going to get out of the Army, and you're going to use your college money. You're going to go do something. So I went and did something. And at that time, I wanted to be a cop, right? Because that was it. I was going to be, and I was a reserve sheriff deputy back home, and up on the Red River, and on the Okie side. And he said, I wanted to be a cop. And he said, no, you're going to be a doctor. You have hands for healing and hands for war. I've done both. I've been in combat and done other things in the military, lots of years. And so I said, well, I'm going to go to medical school. So here I am, a criminal justice major. I applied to medical school. The odds of that happening are just outrageous. The University of New England. And so it's way up in the Northeast, not typical guy that shows up there. And by divine appointment, one of the men on the board, the chief of staff, was a Korean War veteran. He liked me. There were 3 seats left for 40 people coming in to talk, to interview, and I got one.
Wow.
So he said, just don't mess up, don't quit, and I didn't. So this is going to be a theme you're going to see here. This is the outrageous odds of this even happening where we're at now. So that takes me a little further on, become a doctor. I was a SWAT team doctor for a while. I was working in emergency rooms. And then I been in the reserves the whole time, military.
Right.
The reserves.
Right.
9/11 happened, right? So 9/11 happened, and I was literally thinking about, I wonder if I should be a cosmetic surgeon or if I should be something else, make a lot of money. And 9/11 happened. And they said, we need people that can stop bleeding on the battlefield. And they ain't cosmetic surgeons.
Right.
So I trained my residency in Beaumont, Texas, transferred residency, finished up at Oklahoma State University, finished that up, and there I went, back into the Army, right, full-time. And that took me to the Special Forces. That's where I wanted to be.
Right.
I was a doctor there. And so I'm going down range, and we're doing deployments and things, and had some serious, combat missions and things that I was involved in. Typically, doctors are not at the pointy end of the spear, right? They're typically in the rear with the gear, I like to say. And somehow I found myself where the patients were being created.
Wow.
And I had to discuss that with a lot of commanders. What are you doing up there in combat? I'm like, sir, this is where the patients are. This is where I got to be. I get my hands on them real quick. And they started to see that, and there were other people that were saying we need to get this kind of level of care closer to the edge, leading edge of battle. Look, we just went through 20 years of war, so we learned a lot of things in this time frame. So they signed off on me being able to do those kind of missions. Well, then I went back to them and said, hey, and this is going to get me to where we are now because it's important. I said, hey, can I go to the Green Beret course? And they're like, you're 45 years old, you're a major, you are in a field that's not typically taken into the Green Beret course. This is a combat arms. To be an 18 Alpha is what they call it, a Green Beret commander. And I said, well, then I'll just resign my commission and I'll go as an enlisted guy.
Wow.
And they said, we're going to send you to the shrink, right? It's literally, this is true. Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I go to USASOC headquarters, United States Army Special Operations Command, and I sit down with the guy. They said he's on the way. And he comes in and I'm like, Bob. And he goes, Pete. I went to med school with the guy.
What?
Right? And so he's like, they sent me here to evaluate you. You're not crazy? I go, no, you know me. He goes, well, I've got to fill this form out. I said, well, hurry up and fill it out so I can get to work. And he goes, okay. So he said, why are you doing this? I mean, why wouldn't you just go as an officer? I said, because I'm a doc and they don't let us go. And so he walks down the hall, he talks to the commanding general, because he's in that hallway with the generals, just headquarters. And he says, the general wants to see you. So I go and see the general, and he's asking me, why do you want to do this? And I said, because I've been going down range since 2003. This was 2011.
Okay.
Right? So I'd already been going for a while with these guys.
Right.
And he said, I'll send you, just don't quit. I don't usually do this, but I know your reputation. I know that you've been in some combat. I know you've been there, done it. I like what you do. Just don't get killed. Roger that, sir. Move out.
Don't quit. Don't get killed.
Don't get killed. So he said some expletives, which I can't say here, but just say don't blah, 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 get killed. I'm like, Roger that, sir. And I stepped out smartly. And so I was able to go as a doctor, as a 45-year-old guy. Look, my youngest guy in the class next to me was 30-something, 32.
Wow.
So, a little bit older. And it was an uphill battle every day. If I ever wanted to quit, I'd say I'll quit at the end of the week, but I'm still here now, and that's what got me through. I was not as strong in my faith at the time that I am now. I wish I had it. Mm-hmm. And the Lord kept saying to me throughout all of it, even though I was perceiving it, not hearing it like I do now, there's a reason for all this. There's a reason for all this. And these are hardships. These are not simple things. It sounds I'm joking around a lot, but it was probably the hardest thing I ever had to do physically.
Right.
Besides going to combat and getting wounded and putting guys in the body bag that were my friends the day before, those things make you sometimes want to quit. But I found a place deep down inside that said no. For example, 12th of May 2004, this is an important story because this guy saved my life. I can't say his name. I'm just going to say that this sergeant, this 20-something-year-old kid, basically saved my life on the 12th of May 2004 in Iraq, near Baghdad, and in the process lost his. Mm. And that's the 12th of May 2004. I had a 13th of May 2004. What does that mean? Well, anytime somebody goes through something that's trauma, the next day you have to ask yourself, what am I going to do? Am I going to continue, going back out and driving NASCAR, whatever it was that brought me to that near trauma, near death experience? I continued and went out, and I became the expert on the job that I was doing in combat, right? And that's why I had to go to that Q course, because I knew that would make me the expert. And that was the reason.
Yeah.
Now, the personal reason, yeah, it's cool. I wanted to be a Green Beret ever since I was, 17. And I finally got the chance to do it. Okay, so that gets me to where now I'm in a very small group of people and in a very fine niche. Right?
Yeah.
So you're now one of 5 doctors in the country. I was the first one to go to selection, and they let others go. So there's only 5 in the whole inventory in the United States Army. And so then that put me in a place where I could really weigh in on some major missions, be involved with some major things, but also go to a lot of countries and understand what war looks like. It's going to get to where we're at because we are on a war footing in this country.
Yeah.
So I know war. I know what it looks like. I know unconventional warfare, 5th generation warfare, unlimited warfare, foreign internal defense, all the things that Green Berets learn and know and can do in their sleep. I can do them in my sleep, but I can smell when it's coming. Color revolutions, I've seen it all downrange. There's a color revolution taking place upon this nation.
Yes.
And it comes in the form of insidious, which is slow onset warfare that most people don't see. Mm-hmm. Now, we cover that with the spiritual warfare that you and I talk about on most of the shows we've been together. And the spiritual warfare is what then tells me, as a believer, and somebody that's a leader, not a politician, but a leader, that because we are a triune being made up of a spirit and a soul and a body, we have to respond in all 3.
Right.
If we don't respond in the spiritual warfare, we miss it, right? And so, am I going to be the guy that's going to get on the stage with Governor Abbott and have a debate and say, hey, you're not operating in the spiritual sense. We have to be as wise as serpents and as gentle as a lamb, right? And so, I'm not going to come across hard on the man. I've got secrets. I know what went on during COVID. I know what went on during the border mission. I can talk about the Colonia and all those things, the Colony Ridge out in East Texas.
Yeah.
We can talk about it. I know it firsthand. But I don't have to bust anybody down. I don't have to degrade my own character in doing it.
Right.
Because out of love for who? The people of this state. Because they deserve a leader and not a politician. So all that stuff prepared me for this Esther moment, such as this. I hope that answers the question.
It does. And I love that because people are going to get to know you in this interview. Just who is Doc Pete? Where did you come from? Why did you decide to do this? And it's kind of seems like a David and Goliath kind of thing. And yet, in the absence of leadership,
Leaders lead.
leaders lead.
David and Goliath. I'm glad you brought that up. So when you all ambushed me at Pentecost,
Yes.
and I say that lovingly, I do, because it was one of those things where we hear people say that in the absence of leadership, leaders lead. We know that. I learned that as a young private. We hear things saying, act locally, you'll see a global impact. We hear these things. And so what did we do as a remnant A team, or me as by myself, really on a horse with my dog Joe, who's down underneath us here, when I got, not booted out of the Texas National Guard, but essentially fired from my job. Totally different story we'll get to.
Yeah, we'll get back to that.
Yeah, but when I did that, I went through a little bit of a pity party because I didn't have a job. And I didn't want to do practice medicine. I was a soldier that became a doctor. I wasn't a doctor person,
Right.
People always tell me, you seem like a cop or a soldier. I'm like, bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not that guy. So what did I do? I mean, I literally went down to the border and just started talking to rancher people that I knew from the border mission, Operation Lone Star, and said, how can I help you? I'm here. I'm the Lone Ranger, essentially. I'm here to help you. And so we did that. So we collectively, Bandit, my horse, Joe, and me. Joe's my dog. And then from that, though, a ministry grew because now I see it, right? See the tapestry and how it works? Life is ministry and ministry is life. So important. So important because that allowed us to, or us, once again, collectively, to then find like-minded people who believe in the same thing and were willing to do the hard things when it comes to counter human trafficking. That's where we focus. And so I ran into Robert and Jamie Agee. People know them as the Billboards for Freedom folks. And that was a while back. And they did a billboard. And the first one was in Lubbock, right?
Yep.
And we were doing an event at your place.
Right here,
Right
Ragtown.
here, Ragtown, right where we're at, yeah. And so we were doing, that's where we met. And then from that, we've run into each other throughout the years. But Robert and Jamie Agee put up a billboard, and then it caught the attention of Tom Homan, of all people. I don't know how. I don't know why. I just know that it caught the attention. So I'm driving through Austin one day, and I get this no-number phone number, and usually that's the government. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, here's a government person call me. And I answer it. All right, this is Tom Homan. I want to know what it is that you're doing. And I'm like, well, I'm driving through Austin. What are you doing? He said, no, I was told by Jason Jones. Now, he's border 911 guy, but he's also a previous Texas Department of Public Safety intel guy who works for Newsmax, and he's a reporter now, and he does great work. He says, you're the real deal. Now, this is Tom Homan telling me this. You're the real deal. So I wanted to start helping you out. So what are you doing? I said, we're kicking off this Remnant A team, a bunch of people like me, and we're going to be on the border, and we're going to be, working on counter human trafficking. I want to meet you. So we meet in Wimberley, Texas. And we meet at an event where he was raising some money for Border 911. Now he's the border czar,
I love it.
right? But this is the tapestry. So we meet, and he says, I want you to come to Mar-a-Lago, right? We say Mar-a-Lago, just like we say Blanco, right? So that's the way I say it. So we're down in Mar-a-Lago for most people, and we're down there, and we have this event, and it's a Border 911 event. But then I met more groups like me, right? Because now we've got another tapestry happening where I'm meeting with other pipe hitters. These are operators, special operators,
Right.
who are affectionately known as pipe hitters to us. And we're meeting, and they've heard about us, and I've heard about them. And when big old dude, right, from Houston, Texas, SEAL Team 6 guy, and he comes up with, not tears in his eyes, but this look of, you're feeling it too, aren't you, Doc? Because he's a man of God. He says, you're feeling it too, aren't you? I said, yeah, I'm feeling it. He goes, there's something happening in the kingdom. We've got to
Yes.
get together. And so we got together, and we had a meeting in Dripping Springs, Texas, which was a gathering of eagles. Since then, we've had 4 meetings, and the group has grown to a task force
Love it.
of men of God who are willing to go out there and put their bodies on the line to rescue children, to rescue women, to rescue people from slave and sex trafficking, right? So that's what grew from Tom Homan signing on to us and allowing us to raise our first money. We do everything as a 508c1a, which is a non-for-profit.
Yeah.
And so that kicked us off. But that was Robert and Jamie's billboard that really made that happen,
Right.
right? And it's a happenstance that Tom Homan would call us.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that kicked us off to where we're at now, to where we can do more, right? Right.
So you mentioned the border and several different things, and I know that when we were visiting, the platform that you're running on, you have several basics, and you have the border invasion as one, you've got the trafficking component as one, and Trinidad as one.
Yeah.
Talk about some of the things with regard to what you saw on the border and, and where things are in Texas that made you say, hey, you know what, in the absence,
Of leadership.
yeah,
Leaders
you're
lead.
stepping up. So can
Okay.
you talk a little bit about that?
I will talk about it. One of the main things for me was the understanding, and this is important for people to understand their constitutional sovereignty is at stake here.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Now, when I go and speak to the head of Department of Public Safety, one of the highest peoples in Texas, persons in Texas in that operation, I won't name names, a person I like, and I ask him, where are y'all at with a couple of my pipe hitters, and we're in his office and we're meeting down in downtown Austin, and we're meeting, and I say, where are y'all at with counter human trafficking? He says, well, we're so limited on what we can do, we have to focus on the major crimes list. I said, well, where is it on there? He goes, well, it's not really on there. It's something that we will develop, but we don't focus there.
So
Yeah.
human trafficking, child sex trafficking is not,
Not considered a major crime. It's a major crime, of course, but they like anything in the military. Believe me, I've gone through this in my heart. Like anything, leadership, right? As a leader, you develop what's called the commander's intent. I have to give the commander's intent. Now, I follow the commander's intent now when I get that still smaller booming voice. But when you have to follow that, then they have to set their priorities on lines of effort. Okay, so their line of effort would be whatever major crime 1 through 10. Okay, and if it's not on that list, in my book, and we know that that was the number one way that the cartels were making money, pushing people across the border.
right,
People that were used as pawns.
Yeah.
Little girls. I've got hundreds of cases of grabbing kids and saying, take care of these kids, and handing them to Border Patrol, hoping that they would be okay. And in my own advice, I say hope is not a plan now, because the federal government, under Child Protective Services as well, and HHS, are responsible for losing nearly 500,000 children right
Oh,
now
I know.
from the border, unaccompanied minors.
well aware.
We're aware. And so Tara Rodas came to us and said, this is what I'm getting. So I marry these things up with, when you were talking about the importance of what we're doing, is, well, maybe if I'm the governor, I can set that thing straight, that
Yes.
list,
Yes.
right? But I wasn't thinking governor. I was thinking, we need to get to the person in charge. So I am trying like crazy to say, who's in charge? But they don't want to talk to us because we're too bold, or we're too, I was told one time, you guys are a think tank, but you're more of a do tank. So we really don't want you to be helping us designing this
I'm
strategy.
sure they don't.
No, because we do, right? We get
Yeah.
out there and do it.
Get things done.
We get dirty. We live in the dirt, right? And that's where we live, and we enjoy it. But because we know that's where we get the truth. And if we're going to be now is what we're doing, what's the win? What's the win in this thing? It's to bring in the truth, the way, the truth, and the life.
So good. So you prioritize trafficking.
It has to be. It has to
has
be.
to be.
With regard to the invasion on the border, it has to be one of the number one priorities. It has to be the number one in my book. When you want to see heaven on earth, let me tell you what heaven on earth looks like. This is emotional. Heaven on earth is in the eyes of a little girl. When you hand her somebody and you know that she's going to be safe. You know it. It just happened to us not too long ago. A little girl in Mexico, actually, south of the border, because she was on that side, we had to go get her. We got her, we handed her to an orphanage of people that we trust, because the mayor of that town is friends of ours.
Wow.
We've made friends on both sides of the border. But when you do that, that's heaven on earth, right? That's God's most precious. Human beings. Yeah.
I'm very passionate, as you well know,
I
about
know.
that.
Yeah. And this is why we're in this. This is why we're in it, because that's heaven on earth. Now, there are priorities, right? That's a priority. And there are other lines of effort. We can talk about property rights, right? If you read a book, and it's a really good book, and I recommend anybody to read it. It's short. It's called The Law, and it was written by Frédéric Bastiat. He's a Frenchman, wrote it around the time of the French Revolution. This is the bottom line up front. The only purpose of a legislator is to unlawfully plunder, illegally plunder the citizen.
Truth.
They don't create anything. They don't do anything. Career politicians are there to perpetuate their own species.
That's the truth.
That is the truth. I've been there. I've done it. I've been in the Speaker of the House's office in D.C. numerous times briefing, and watched those people, and then going out to dinners with them and listening and thinking, these are the most traitorous people in the world, on both sides.
Yeah.
Right? Because to me, one of the major platforms is term limits. That's another one.
Yeah.
You know who stood at the Alamo in 1836? Davy Crockett. You know he was a congressman before that? Mm-hmm. And he was term limited out, and he got out, and then he told them, I'm going to, you can go to hell, I'm going to Texas. That's what he said.
Yeah.
Right? And he ended up at the Alamo. Right? That's the kind of leadership that we're talking about.
Yeah.
The guy that's willing to roll up his sleeves and get in the trenches and get in the dirt. Because we are on a war footing. I'll say it 100 times over again, because you don't see this war. You don't see this war, but everything's at stake. The Constitution is at stake. Lady Liberty is at stake. But God.
But God. ... Well, God is absolutely raising people up in this hour, and exposing. There's so much exposure happening, and one of the things that I know Texans are very concerned about is places like Epic City and the invasion. Can you talk a little bit about where you
There
are
are 4
with all
cities.
of that? Yeah.
There are 4 right now that we're following. We haven't investigated those. We're with people. We talk to people that do. That's a Sharia law focused city.
What in the world? Right here in
I
Texas.
believe that's illegal in the state of Texas to have a different kind of law.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's number 1. So we're gonna put an end to that. Obviously, we have to.
Yes.
Right. That doesn't go on the major crime list, but it goes in the priority list for sure.
Okay.
Right. That has to be there.
I know people are going to want to know about that. Like,
Especially
what are you
now.
going to do about that?
Especially now. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's unconstitutional. It's actually illegal. So we're just going to focus on that. It's illegal, and it probably will fit in the top 20 for sure. It's just going to stop. That's going to end. There's no reason for that to be there. Just like the Colony Ridge development in Liberty County.
Yes.
All right. So Michael Yon and Ann Vandersteel were on Operation Burning Edge, and I was on the kickoff of that operation. I didn't stay with them for the whole thing down the border, but this kickoff took place in Liberty County, and that's where we got helicopters and flew over and mapped it out. And we witnessed from the air 40 square miles that was being developed for a refuge for illegals to live in, right? Illegal immigrants, and some of which there was a murder that had taken place there where somebody was drunk with an AK-47, of course, and decided to shoot his neighbors because they told him to turn the music down. All right, so these are all illegals that are in the country illegally, and they're using that development to in some kind of scheme, and it has to do with mortgages, okay? Some kind of mortgage
real
scheme,
estate stuff,
right?
yeah.
I don't worry about that. What I worry about is it's illegal.
Right.
Right? Here's the stats on it. When we did the math and we looked at the numbers of how many trailers would fit in there in little houses, it would be 200,000 residents. It would be the 18th largest city in Texas if it was allowed to be completed. So we exposed it, right?
Yes, you
We exposed
did.
it. And it was embarrassing to the current governor, and here's why, twofold. 1, they weren't doing anything. 2, Trey Harris, all right, no relation to the county, just south of it. Trey Harris was a developer, had given $1.4 million in campaign funds to that governor, this current governor's campaigns. Now, I'm not here to bash the guy. These are just facts.
Facts.
Right? And so there is a problem there. Why hasn't it been shut down? Yes, they went in there and they sent some troopers in and they did a good job and they arrested a few people. I get it. Why hasn't it been shut down?
Right.
That's not okay.
Somebody
Not
needs to
okay,
call
Mama.
Tom Homan.
You call Tom Homan.
Get some,
Right?
yeah,
That guy gets a
there's-
phone call every 20 minutes or something
I
like that.
know,
But
I
yeah, we need to be prioritizing that.
Yeah.
Because in
Yeah.
the seams and gaps of chaos comes war. And those are seams and gaps of chaos.
Yeah.
If I want to take over a country without firing a shot, all I have to do is disenfranchise the citizens, which means putting every kid on drugs, which means not giving them a chance to come up in the world and be successful,
Right.
which means getting everybody on the government dime. Okay, these are all Marxist techniques. We're looking at the Bolshevik revolution, which said, well, get kids involved in focus on sex and not on their own government or their own lives,
Right.
right?
Right.
Productive lives. But sovereignty, when true sovereignty comes, and people know what's going on, that's why we're torch bearers of truth. If you know what's going on, then you can say, hey, I want to be involved. Because that's where true sovereignty comes from. Look, we're sovereign only because we are created in their image, in God's image. We're created in their image. Okay?
Yeah.
That's what it says in the book.
Yep.
And so if we are, then we are truly sovereign beings. We were in Genesis told to take dominion
Yes.
of and to
Yes.
steward, right? To steward these things. So we don't need a government to tell us how to steward. There are certain enumerated things that the federal government's responsible for. But remember this, that the state governments, the states created the federal government.
Right. Right.
We fought a revolution over that. Right? So you cannot, the government, despite the supremacy clause, cannot be supreme to the thing that created it. Nor can the state be supreme to the person. They cannot, and not when it comes to sovereignty. So we exercise those things. And I'll tell you, my team, we exercise sovereignty. We are lawful, we are ethical, and we are moral. But we exercise sovereignty because we know we don't need permission to rescue somebody,
Right.
right? Now, we've gone through all the state hoops to be Texas Council on Law Enforcement carrying members, card-carrying members, and we do things by the book. But we go to sheriffs and say, we're here to help you. And they take us up on it.
I love it. I love it. You have, you've been one of those people ever since I've known you, and you don't wait around for someone else to lead. You have always, ever since I've known you and all the stories that we've talked about, you've always been at the front, leading from the front. And so in this next season, like you said, what is it, 260 days or?
Well, it's 259 days and a wake-up.
You're going to be leading from the front.
We have to.
And I want to say this. You've mentioned the Lord. You've mentioned the Bible. I know the man of God that you are. And I know that you've had some serious prophetic words over your life. Would you like to talk a little bit
Sure.
about that?
I'd love to talk about it. So I'm going to talk about Miss Barker first. Miss Barker, lady from back home, you know, my best friend's mom. She said it to me going to one of my trips downrange at church. You know, she's an older lady, but sweet, still with it. Someday you're going to speak to millions. Now, bear in mind, at that point, I'm like going into the Green Berets as a Green Beret operator. At this point, I'm going back, you know, downrange. I said, I'll never speak to millions. And she said, you're going to speak to millions, and you're going to make a difference in this world. And I'm thinking, I'm a gray side operator, which is a guy that stays in the shadows, right? I'm a guy that doesn't come on no social media to speak of. And then the border happens, and of course I was a whistleblower and went with Senator Johnson and pointed out what the shots were doing to the soldiers, testified in a federal court case and protected SEALs. Ha, Green Berets protecting SEALs, once again.
You're going to get some,
Oh, yeah.
some rub in there.
I love you guys. Yeah.
So, and before we get more into the prophetic words, because there's a
Yeah.
couple more I want you to
Yeah,
talk
there's some
about,
more.
but let's go back up a little bit to COVID, because you mentioned that you were a whistleblower in DC.
Yeah.
So you were
Yeah.
in the military.
Right.
Tell us what happened there,
This
because I
is-
think this is an important point.
Yeah, it is, and I can do the 40,000-foot view on it.
Yeah.
Because it's very detailed. But when I came back to Texas from Africa trip, I had an Africa trip, right? They sent us there to go do some counterinsurgency operations in North Africa, you know, against terrorists.
Yeah.
All right, so come back to America. I'm back in Austin, and I show up to headquarters, and they say, hey, there's this COVID thing. I'm like, yeah, I heard about it on the news. It's coronavirus. It's the common cold. We don't need to worry about it. Well, unfortunately, the state is mounting a response. I'm like, what? So I end up being on the governor's task force, right? They just took me and said, well, you're just back. You're a doctor. Go be
Yeah.
on the task force.
Yeah.
So I represented the Texas Military Department with Governor Abbott's task force. And that was
Okay.
held at the State Operations Center, Emergency Operations Center, downtown Austin. And so we're in this little, you know, bunker underground, and every day we're looking at all the problem sets that were with regard to that. And I'm doing my homework because I just come from Africa where I've used hydroxychloroquine for troops for malaria. I've prophylactically protected them from getting malaria.
Yeah.
It's safe. Used it. I won't say I got fired from that job, but let's just say this. They got tired of hearing me say the words hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin.
Yeah.
I kept saying it over and over again. I gave a report as detailed as I could. Look, and I'm a plumber on the battlefield. I stopped bleeding. That's what I do, right? I'm not an epidemiologist or virologist. I'm a trauma guy that can shoot a gun, right?
Okay.
So that's what I did for a living. So I'm down there doing the best I can to read up on the things that I learned in medical school and didn't focus on for however many years. But I'm advising that office and saying, you can do this thing by lesser intrusive means, safer medications. We don't need a vaccine. We don't need to put people on ventilators. They bought $54 million in the first week they spent in that operation center. I saw it because there was a ticker tape on the wall.
Yeah.
And it was almost like watching the national deficit and getting the blues.
Just watching
right?
it.
And just watching it tick, 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 tick. And so I sat next to the procurement guy for all of the response for the state of Texas. And he would ask me, is this the kind of mask we need? And I'd say, we don't need masks. And he would say, is this the kind of PCR tests that we need? You know, the swabs in the nose.
Yeah.
And I'd say, we don't use them that way. And they got tired of me answering things this way, but I was telling the truth. But it didn't matter because there was an agenda. And the people that ran the mission in Texas for the response was public health. Okay, so when you talk about complete lack of leadership, they represent the disability to pour water out of a boot when the instructions are on the heel,
Wow.
right? That's them.
So you ended up, and you were a burr
Yeah.
under the saddle,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
From the get-go with the whole COVID thing. You had how many men under?
Oh, gosh.
you?
I mean, on that one there, I had, well, as a liaison, I didn't have any. I was reporting.
Right.
But then they sent me out into the field to go run the testing.
Yes.
Now I had a lot of troops.
Yeah.
Right? Because now
It's
they're
like
all over the
6,000
state.
or something,
Well,
right?
no, that was on the border. That 6,000 on the border was the Operation Lone Star. That
Oh.
was subsequent. That came subsequent.
Okay.
After they told me to go ahead and go to the border, like, you do better in the field, go down there. No, the testing was an eye opener, because the first place that we went in mass to test was Tyson's in Amarillo, and a lot of people from this area know that place. It's a
Yeah.
huge meat packing plant, huge feeder lots outside, and everything stopped the day that we went there, and they shut it down because too many people tested positive. Yet I was there and nobody was sick. I'm a doctor. I watched everybody walk
All
through there.
those false
Thousands of people,
positives.
false positives. And it had a lot to do with the way that the cyclic rate of what they, how many cycles they did, all that. We don't need to get into details, but I'm going to tell you, they didn't need to shut it down. So as I'm watching the meat packing plants fall, right, the ones that stayed open were the ones that got a little wise to it and figured it out. So they just didn't have their people come in. Said, we're not going to bring
On
in.
the day of testing.
Call in sick. Call in sick. Somebody told them, just call in sick. I loved it. I was like, so we show up with these testing teams, and guess what? Nobody was there. They didn't meet the threshold. They stayed open.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting. Some great Americans out there. So when we look at what happened, and I'm looking at now another vector upon an attack on this nation. Let's go up a step on strategic level. Right, an attack on our food. Right, and,
Yeah.
and we can say definitely there's attacks upon our health with regard to fluoride in water and things like that. Things that we need to focus on as a governor. The state of Florida has outlawed it, right? So we need to be there too. But we look at all these attacks, and then let's go back to the scriptures here and say what does 2 Chronicles 7:14?
Yeah.
And if my people
Who would call by my name
call by my name,
will humble themselves.
humble themselves,
Seek my face.
and seek my face. That's the second part to a logical statement. 7:13, and I'm gonna paraphrase it. 7:13, the one right before it. If I stop the rains, that's the water. If I allow locusts to eat their food, if I put a plague upon their land, then if they do 7:14, there we go. They'll heal our land. He'll
Yeah.
heal our land. So these are logical statements that are in my playbook, right? The one that you and I both look at. We're not red-pilled, we're red-lettered,
Right.
right? And so we know that. So when I saw those things start marrying it up, those were vectors of attack on this nation, on this state. Now, I leave my job was done, but essentially they didn't want me to be there because I kept telling the truth. And so They just said, well, go to the border and take up the position as task force surgeon for the Operation Lone Star. That's where we started. With 600 soldiers, it grew to 6,000 and then more than that. That number's unpublished, but I'll just say over 6,000
You
soldiers.
had a lot of soldiers.
A lot. In comes the mandates that say, the Department of Defense said, you must take the shots.
Yeah.
And that's where we had the problem, right? We got a problem, Houston. And generals came down to me and they said, you got to quit doing informed consents. And I said, sir, I'm sorry, I'm just not, that's an unlawful order. But, they liked me before that. But I became what we call in Latin persona non grata, person not wanted, real quick. And that's just what the cost of truth is. But when somebody tells you straight up, that General Two-Star looked at me and said, it's not about the science, Chambers, it's about the policy. That's what a two-star general told me on that border. And when I watched 27-year-olds to 30-something-year-olds having heart attacks, myocarditis, pericarditis, essentially inflammation of the heart, strokes, these are not normal things I've never seen in Army medicine. Then I knew there was something afoot or awry. I personally believe that is a bioweapon.
Yeah.
It was planned. It is a plandemic. Mickey Willis did a show on it. I suggest, folks that haven't seen it, watch it. I have a short piece in it, but it's important because it demonstrated the numbers of people damaged by that.
Yeah.
Neurologic deficits up 1,100% in 6 months in the military alone.
Wow.
So, all that said is that's how I became a whistleblower, went to Senator Johnson, he exposed it, and then I'm now in the fight.
You're in the fight on a lot of fronts.
I like fighting.
The biggest fight, I believe, and we talk about this a lot, is the spiritual front, because there are a lot of people that are still asleep, but I think right now the Lord, just for the last many, many years, is waking up the remnant. You call your team the remnant, A-team, and so there is a remnant that is awake.
We are.
And are realizing our position as sons of the Most High, and realizing the need for different leadership, and so there's so many scriptures, Doc, of when wicked men are in leadership, then the people.
There's a price.
There's a price to pay for the people, and so I think more and more people are just saying, you know what, we have to change the leadership. And so here you are, and we were talking about prophetic words, and I know that there are several that are coming forth
Every
right
day.
now. Every day, people are saying yes. And so let's get back to that.
Sure.
I wanted to talk about COVID for a second. I wanted to talk about the border invasion and things that you
Context.
saw firsthand that are causing you to say, I need to step up into this place. So couple different prophetic words we talked about. You've been on the phone with some very key people, just kind of once you got your booming voice from the Lord.
Right.
So what do you think about this? And you've had some things come forth, even just in the last few days, that I think you need to talk about.
Yeah, I would, and I've got them here because one particular one that is important. And when we're talking about the prophetic, I'm just going to read what was sent to me. Okay. This is what I heard. WEF, World Economic Forum, Abbott is handing Texas to the globalist as a sacrificial lamb to secure his designs on the White House. What I was doing was making a list. And so the list is Colony Ridge. I talked about that. Sharia law cities. One of the major is Epic City, 400 acres. Human trafficking is not a crime on the list of crimes, according to the governor. Now, this person is working with me on the campaign, but had this message. Tren de Aragua. That's a gang basically out of Venezuela.
Yeah.
The area called Aragua, and the Tren of Aragua. They are heavy in Texas. They're heavy all across the nation now. We had that information early on, gave it to law enforcement. Unfortunately, didn't do anything. We gave it to media. Media got it out, and then Abbott started talking about it. These are facts, right? Leaders lead. And then I heard message back in the scripture here. World Economic Forum, Abbott is handing Texas to globalists as a sacrificial lamb again. So this is twice. And then the second one, This is just today. This is a retired colonel. She flies the largest plane in the inventory, a C-5A Galaxy. Amazing person. I don't have permission to give her name. Maybe we will. Maybe we'll get it out. This is what she says. We have 200 to 300 days to save the republic before the deep state globalists clinch the worldly power indefinitely. We have a multiple front battle. As I say, we're on a war footing, simultaneously occurring across and throughout the realms. We need prayer warriors. We need Holy Spirit-driven, led networks of people. And we need the unity of effort under the law of the Creator and the aligned highest man-made law of the land, the Constitution, and the state constitution, I believe in both, of the land, ultimately supporting the single sovereignty of the people I talked about before. It's in us. The deep state Nephilim remnants must be thrown out. That's what she said.
Wow, and that is so encouraging to me, because in the sealed book, we talk a lot about that kind of stuff all the time, and bloodlines, and
Right.
goes all the way back.
Right, and this is what caught your attention to say,
It
bring
did. It
this
caught
up.
my attention,
Right.
because I'm like, wow, this is not just a lone person saying this or there, and then you have a colonel
Right.
that is aware, spiritually aware, because when you're spiritually aware, the rest takes care of itself.
She's just one of them. There's so many of us
Yeah.
out there, and
Yeah.
that's the beautiful thing of this is people don't know, but until you know, you don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
it's what a good leader will tell you. I don't know what I don't know. If you ask me about property taxes, I'll say we don't need them, period. Right? That's true sovereignty.
Amen.
Right? We don't need to pay a lien on the house that we live in that we bought.
Right.
Right?
Right.
The reason that Texas still holds its land patent office in Texas is because of its original sovereignty as a nation. It was
Yeah,
annexed by
yeah.
the federal government in 1845, but it's the only state that maintains its land patent office in its own state. The rest of them are back out east.
Wow.
Right, so that's a godly thing, right? That's what I
Yeah.
believe. That's a godly, divine intervention, if you will, there, right?
Yeah.
But that only emboldens what I'm talking about. But a lot of people talk about, sovereignty with regard to land ownership. It is a true sovereignty. We shouldn't pay a lien. So that's one. There's an anemic leadership problem. Anemic meaning, low blood, right? Medical word.
Yes.
Okay, so
Low on iron.
low on iron. And iron is fortitude in my book.
Amen.
Right? Iron sharpens iron. Fortitude sharpens fortitude.
Right.
It doesn't have to be men doing it. We sharpen each other as followers in Christ, of Christ. So if we have an anemic leadership problem, and we're approaching a precipice, if you will, where we're in a triune attack spiritually on the spirit of this nation. Lady Liberty is not dead, right? And she's not going to be, not on my watch, right? And we've got to embolden those because, and then we have a attack on our soul, right? Our heart, because the disenfranchised are out there. We can see it. People are lost. They're confused. There's chaos. Our God is a God of order. Satan is, the small God, worldly God of chaos.
Yeah. Yep.
And I work in chaos. That's what I maneuver through. But God is going to design that pathway for us when we have eyes to see and ears to hear. We've got to listen to those little voices or those booming voices, or take the turn, the bifurcation in the road. To which side do we go? We pray about, right? And we get there. But that's what we do collectively as a community, as we commune together, right? As a community. When we do that collectively, there is power in that. Right? The old song, "There's Power in the Blood." I sing it every day when I'm driving down the road. There's power in the blood. But that's a fact. There is. And so if you don't see it, it's okay. And if you think that, I'm a religious zealot, I'm not. I just believe and I know. And if you knew my Jesus, you'd go, wow, pretty amazing. And
well, speaking of that,
Yeah.
you told a story at our event that we had that you spoke. And I know we didn't even talk about this, but you've had some angelic encounters that, can you speak a little bit about that? Just a tiny
these
bit.
are the things that, you don't find out about until years later, and you say there was an angel involved. I'll talk about one particular.
Yeah.
This was after a hard landing in a desert. Got out of a plane, went a long ways through the desert. It's hot. somebody helped me out, a guy on a camel. He was a Bedouin, I thought. And he took me to a little village, and I got a satellite phone out. I was able to do it because out here we call them haboobs.
Mm-hmm.
Back there it's just a dust storm in the middle of a desert. Literally could not see any sky and couldn't get a call out to get help. Finally got to a place where the sky had cleared and got some help, and went into this little village. And this guy that helped me, I said, I want to give him some money. Where's he at? Because my guys are coming in 15 minutes to pick me up. And he'd give me water on the trail and all that, on camelback. He was a Bedouin, I thought. And he, as far as I knew, maybe I was hallucinating. But it wasn't until I got back to my base camp in the Sahara, north side of the Sahara, west side, where there was a guy there that was, cleaning our hooches, and he was wearing the same kafia, same little thing with his eyes showing, and I could see his eyes, and I went, those are the eyes of the guy on the camel. So I was leaving that base camp, going back to the States. I had some money in my pocket that I thought, well, I'm going to pay it forward. I'm going to give it to this guy for being such a great helper, keeping our hooches clean, our living quarters. And I heard, what you do for the least of these, you do for me, right? And I gave him probably, in his world, probably 5 months of salary, which is not a lot. It was a roll of 20s.
Yeah.
And I get back, and then there's Miss Barker. And she says, I just prayed that there would be an angel in case something happened to you. Did anything happen while you're on that trip? I'm like, oh, typical Army stuff, everything's okay. That was an angel. That was an angel.
Now
That was a divine intervention. And we've discussed it on our team at length, but we look for it now. We look for those things, because when they tell me, okay, Pete, this is a foolhardy adventure running for governor. It's a foolhardy adventure. He has a $100 million war chest. And I say, well, my God has 100 million angels or more.
Yes.
Right? What does it take to win an election? One angel, right? One intervention. The right place, the right time, the right equipment. Leaders lead. Politicians don't lead. They illegally plunder. As that Bastiat said, illegally plunder.
Wow.
They call it legal plunder on their side. I call it illegal plunder.
Yes.
In the book,
Yeah.
he says
I
legal
think
plunder.
most people are with you on that.
Oh,
at
it's
this point.
the tide, whether you believe or you don't, is moving in the direction of truth.
Yes, it is.
And then the more truth that people seek, the more they will find the Christ Jesus.
Amen. Yes, yes. Well, Doc Pete, is there anything that you want to say as we wrap this up, and just to folks that are just now getting to know you, or that that you would say, all right, we're doing this. It's going to be full on.
Yeah, it's I would do exactly what I do in my team room, okay, as a commander. I would do what I do in my current team room. And listen, the Remnant A team isn't going away just because I'm running for office.
Right.
I have to step down as far as by the books. The book says you can't be running anything else when you're governor. But logistically, I can't do all. But what I would tell you, if you're on my team, is I need each and every able-bodied person to come to our aid, as William Barrett Travis said, from the walls of the Alamo, with all dispatch. Because we are besieged on all sides by tyrannical, satanic, if you will, in some cases, principalities, rulers of darkness, lovers of mammon, ideologies that are Marxist in nature, coercive beings that will do anything they can to stay in office, ugly things, and those with egos the size, I hate to say, I'm just going to use the size of Alaska. I want to say size of Texas, but their egos, their egos are overboard, and it's time for a change, right? When we can focus on being true leaders, and who operate in what I would call exuding confidence and demonstrating competence. That's what I do as a leader. I tell my guys, it's not about ego. Exude confidence.
Yeah.
Demonstrate competence, find the right people for each specific. If it's economics, I got the best guy in the world, right? If it's oil, I got the best guy in the world. If it's cattle ranching, I got the best guy in the world. If it's decentralized medicine, I got a couple of the best people in the world that have already signed on,
Okay.
that are willing to help. Because when I say decentralized medicine, I say that for a reason,
Yeah.
and we'll get there. maybe a different show, because there's a lot of details. But I will be that guy that will set the commander's intent.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is to the people on my team and the people out there on the Team Texas, right?
Team Texas,
Right?
I love that.
We've got to get the Team Texas coming to our aid with all dispatch, because this Republic of Texas, right, this is dirt, this is sacred ground. And this is the domino state of the flyovers, and maybe for the rest of the country. If Texas falls, so does the sovereignty of this nation.
Yeah.
I'm going to need Team Texas from now until March of 2026. That's the primary.
Okay.
We've got to win the primary. We've got to just focus on victory, prayer, and that's where you're going to come in, because you with our prayer team leader, you guys are going to be getting after it. That's where we need you.
Well,
In
we
the
have
game.
we have until March of 2026 to get you into the primary, and then I think by that time, it's going to be. You know what? People are so hungry for fresh leadership, for new leadership, for someone that can roll up their sleeves, get in the dirt, and say it's time to take back not only our Republic of Texas, but our nation, our sovereignty. And so thank you so much for answering the call from the Lord, looking at the prophetic words, and you've put out a few Gideon type fleeces that have come back booming voices.
Booming voices.
It's
yes.
time. And so thank you. I know that I speak for every Texan that's going to meet you and shake your hand over the next little while, that we are so appreciative of someone saying, okay, it's time. It's time to step up.
You are worth it. Every Texan is worth it. And every American truly is worth it. That's why we took an oath and fought wars.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're worth it.
Thank you. Chemtrails, are you going to fix them?
I'm going to have the state of Texas Air National Guard escort them out of the state. The next option will be land, and we're going to arrest you.
Yes.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
done with that.
Yeah, we need to be done with chemtrails in Texas. What about the Chinese buying up land in Texas?
You know what Governor Huckabee did, right, in Arkansas? She outlawed it. They're done. They're returning that land.
So
That
was
should have been done here a long time ago, but yes.
Yeah.
Understand this, when I came across the border one night, we did a recon in Del Rio. Came out of the woods. There's a business there in Del Rio, Texas, flying a Chinese flag.
What?
Yeah. I told the state about it. I told everybody else about it. And you know what? You know who took that flag down? A couple of bubbas from Del Rio, Texas. Not me. But they heard about it and they were like, no, it's not going to happen. But yeah, we're done with that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think those are things Texas are like, what is going on?
Oh, that last one there, that pissed those boys off. I mean, they were like,
Yeah.
we were there at a little bar called, and I wasn't drinking. I was pulling some of my guys out of the bar, but I was like, hey, by the way, fellas, you know, there's a Chinese flag flying over here. And they're like, where? I said, right there by such road. That's Joyce and Industries, this and that. It was gone the next day. It wasn't just taken down. Somebody went out there in the middle of the night and took a metal saw, one of those big saws, and that pole was laying on the ground across the building.
I think there are a lot of people that love to see that done with some of the 5G poles.
Oh, that's another one.
A
5G.
whole other one.
Yeah, we will support the Operation Archimedes that Todd Kellner's doing, which is to stop 5G. It was actually a Texas Senate bill that Governor Abbott signed that it made it not illegal, but made it impossible for municipalities to complain against companies. Otherwise, they could be sued by the companies for putting up 5G electromagnetic frequency towers in their cities, which are dangerous. It's well above and beyond anything that we're seeing it now. Look at it goes hand in hand with geoengineering.
Sure does.
Yeah.
One last thing. I know, at least in West Texas, people are going to be asking you this. What about these windmills that are just littering
Yeah.
our beautiful state?
Well, you know, driving between here and Hill Country, I had almost had tears in my eyes looking at the piles of broken windmill blades just stacked up on the side of the road waiting to be picked up. It's ridiculous. It's unnecessary. We have enough energy to run this country alone in Texas. We'll get to the point where we can actually do what Trump said and drill, baby, drill.
Right.
Lots of reasons right now that the EPA is involved in that. That will be something that we will work on directly in the state of Texas. But we have to consider this. When they shut down the refineries, it takes 5 to 7 years to reopen a refinery. And I've seen 4 of them down in Beaumont and Port Arthur area shut down.
Yeah.
So we've got to get those back up and running, because otherwise we're behind the curve. So oil prices will come back down, but we'll bringing it out of the ground. It's got to meet that price point, which we can get to doing it wisely. We're doing it wisely, but we've got to get this this alternative energy.
Yeah.
It's a waste of
With
money
energy.
and a waste of time.
Thank you for stepping up, Doc. And I think a lot of people have just, like you said, that just feel a little bit disillusioned, a little bit, just even like, what are we going to do? And then you just see these same people year after year, decades, you
Right.
know. And so to have someone say, for such a time as this, and I'm honored that you are answering the call from the Lord to step up and step into that
Yeah.
leadership role. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, and you're worth it.